So, today we're diving into a huge tension in American politics. What happens when a really smart modern campaign strategy runs headfirst into a political landscape that has these deep structural roots? And we're going to use Georgia as our main example to see if a new playbook can actually change the game.
Which brings us to this. This is the central puzzle, right? For any political party trying to make a dent in their rival's turf, this is the million-dollar question. It's not just about having a catchy slogan, it's about understanding the very ground you're fighting on. And this is exactly why we're talking about Georgia. Because in 2025, in these races that, don't usually grab the national headlines, something really interesting happened. Democrats managed to win 2 seats on the state's Public Service Commission. Now, that might not sound like a huge deal, but it was their first statewide win of this kind since 2006. That was a massive signal, a sign that maybe, just maybe, the old rules were starting to change. So how'd they do it?
Well, analysts started digging into these wins, and they pieced together what looks like a genuine strategy, a formula even, for winning against the odds. So let's unpack it.
Okay, so here it is. The playbook basically boiled down to 5 core moves. First, you focus on those kitchen table economic issues that affect everybody. Then, you work to energize new and diverse voters. The strategy also targets smaller, local races to build up credibility. And you do it all with a really pragmatic tone, while investing in powerful, year-round organizing on the ground. Let's take a closer look at a couple of these.
The first step, and this is absolutely crucial, was that the winning message wasn't about some big abstract national debate. It was about things people feel every single month. In these Public Service Commission races, it literally came down to high power bills. I mean, that's an issue that doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It hits everyone's wallet.
The second key was all about expanding the pool of voters. See, the old math for winning in Georgia, they called it the 30-30 rule. It basically assumed victory came from getting 30% of the white vote to add to a strong black voter base. Well, that idea is officially obsolete. The new strategy knows that to win, you have to engage a much broader coalition. We're talking about the state's growing Latino and Asian American communities, plus all those younger voters who maybe haven't voted much before.
And this right here, this is all about playing the long game. Instead of pouring every single resource into the big-ticket presidential or Senate races, this playbook focuses on these so-called down-ballot contests. Look, winning a seat on a utilities commission might not seem glamorous, but it does 2 incredibly important things. It can deliver tangible results for voters, like lower bills, and it builds a whole bench of credible, experienced candidates for the future.
Okay, but here's where our story has to take a sharp turn. Because the Georgia playbook is fascinating. But it happened in a state that's been slowly turning purple for years. What happens when you try to take these lessons and apply them somewhere else? Well, you run smack into a completely different political reality.
And the very first barrier is communication. It's not just what people are saying, it's how they're saying it. A lot of strategists point to this massive disconnect in language. It's like, on one side, you have arguments based on data, on policy, on statistics, and on the other side, the language is all about emotion. It taps into these really deep-seated values around identity, morality, and even survival.
This quote just crystallizes the whole challenge. When one side is showing you charts and statistics, and the other side is talking about protecting your entire way of life, they're not even having the same conversation. Fear and belonging are primal emotions. And you know what? They are incredibly powerful motivators in politics.
And this communication gap, honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Because underneath the surface, there are these deep structural barriers that have been built up over decades, which means the political playing field often isn't level to begin with.
So check this out. Some analysts call this the Republican ecosystem. It's not just one thing, it's a whole stack of advantages. You've got political identity that's completely interwoven with family, with church, with community life. You've got a vast media network that reinforces the same message day in and day out. And then you have the local infrastructure, the party offices, the clubs, that keeps the machine running all year round. It's an incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing system. And let's just zoom in on that media piece for a second. This isn't about a single election cycle. We're talking 20, 30 years of a consistent narrative being built, framing one party as fundamentally alien, as a threat to a certain way of life. And the key takeaway here is that in many of these places, there's simply no equivalent daily messaging operation to even begin to counter it. And then, beyond culture and media, you have the map itself. We have to talk about gerrymandering. It's a huge structural barrier. It basically means that even if a great strategy like the Georgia playbook succeeds, even if you win over more voters across the entire state, the way the districts are drawn can completely prevent that popular support from actually turning into seats in the legislature.
And finally, there's this other structural force at play that has nothing to do with campaigns at all. It's just people moving. As younger, more diverse people move from rural areas to cities for school and jobs, the communities they leave behind become, just by default, older and more politically uniform. This makes the political divide even wider without anyone having to lift a finger.
So this brings us right to the core conflict. On one hand, you've got a smart, adaptable, modern strategy, and on the other, you have this deeply entrenched system. It's the classic irresistible force meeting the immovable object. So to sum it all up, the success in Georgia is real. It proves that a focus on kitchen table issues and building broad coalitions can absolutely work. But the billion-dollar question is whether that strategy is scalable. Can it overcome the powerful headwinds of a decades-old media ecosystem, geographic sorting, and a political identity that's woven into the very fabric of community life?
And that is the question we'll leave you with. Is a brilliant strategy really enough to win on a field that might be structurally tilted against you from the start? Or does the field itself need to change first? That, right there, is the puzzle at the very heart of modern American politics.